I don't know, son. I don't know. You know best. But if I were you, I'd go for Camille, Jenna reasoned. What's in it for you with your Emily? Think about it. She's a poor farm girl like you. You'll rot in poverty all your life, and then you'll bite your elbows. When will you realize what a chance you've missed? Stephen was at a complete loss. He didn't know what to do. He felt more guilty than he had ever felt toward Emily. But he couldn't just give up Camille. She was rich, fabulously rich. All the inhabitants of their small resort town together could not earn so much money as Stephen, a very young girl. And Camille fell in love. For the first time in her life without memory-spoiled girl, who changed young men like gloves, and realized that Stephen her fate at first sight, he worked as a simple lifeguard on the beach, and she, as luck would have it, failed to control the boat and began to sink. Stephen rescued her, pulled her out of the water, and he was sure that their acquaintance would end there. But he was wrong. Camille had taken a fancy to him too, but he couldn't imagine any other girl beside him but Emily. They had grown up together. Stephen's mother and the girl's aunt were friends at home and were sure that when the children grew up, they would marry. Emily was left an orphan early in life. Her aunt was her only close person. Sometimes the girl even forgot that Evelyn was not her mother, but her aunt, and called her mom. And the woman herself was often enough such a mishap. Evelyn had no children of her own, and she always regarded Emily as her own daughter and treated her accordingly. Stephen girl loved without looking back more. And Emily had no one to love. She was afraid to trust strangers. She's known him since she was a little girl. Their relationship started on its own. It couldn't have been any other way. And Emily could not even imagine that someday in Stephen's life will appear another girl, and even such a girl, which she clearly cannot compete with. In addition to the fortune inherited by Camille from her father, she also had an extraordinary beauty. It was impossible not to fall in love with such a girl. So Stephen could not resist. But the young man did not dare to tell Emily about everything. She saw them herself on the embankment by chance and immediately realized everything. Of course, Stephen tried to explain everything to her. He said it was not at all what she thought it was. But Emily, though she was able to forgive her lover, was still very much worried. No big deal, Evelyn waved it off. They were just hanging out. Maybe she asked him for directions, and he was kind enough to walk her out. Why do you take everything so personally? No, Evelyn. Emily sighed. She didn't ask him for directions. Stephen told me everything. He and I explained ourselves. They've known each other a long time. She'd been drowning for weeks. He rescued her. Some rich guy from out of town. I guess she decided to diversify her horizons. She got bored with the Maldives, so she came to our town. But stop it, Evelyn reassured her. I'll be sure to talk to Jenna today. Let her talk to her son about his behavior. Emily didn't want to look resentful in Stephen's eyes. She was afraid that he would resent her if he found out that her aunt had told Jenny about everything. After all, that they were adults and shouldn't have to experience their parents, their squabbles. But Evelyn still couldn't calm down. And even though her niece strictly forbade her to discuss what had happened with Jenna, she still told her friend about everything. At first, the woman was outraged, but when she talked to her son and Stephen told her about the girl with whom he was walking along the promenade, Jenna changed her attitude to what was happening. She always wanted the best for her son. But, unfortunately, the woman had no opportunity to provide Stephen with a decent future. She had no money to pay for the institute. Therefore, when the young man failed his exams in the capital, he went to serve in the army, and after returning, he got a job as a lifeguard on the beach. Such a fate. To tell the truth, Jenna felt insanely guilty in front of her son. We in their town such salaries, what is there an institute? To feed a child and to reach adulthood. Even women who live with their husbands can't afford anything. She's been raising her son alone since he was born. She needed money for one thing, then another, then a third, fifth, 10th. What kind of savings? Stephen didn't complain about life. He had never particularly aspired to anything. All these metropolitan universities and opportunities were not important to the young man. He was quite satisfied with the quiet, peaceful life in his native, small, cozy town, and he was not going to trade it for the turmoil and the pursuit of achievement. His mother did not share his point of view at all. She herself had lived very modestly all her life for the sake of her son and his relative well-being. The woman had to deny herself literally everything. For Stephen, Jenna wished for a better life. Therefore, when the young man met Camille on his way, the woman hinted to him that he should think about it. "Mom, what's there to think about?" he wondered. "She and I are just friends, socializing, nothing more. She'll be here for a month or so." And then he went back to his capital. "I gave up on her. She's got a carload of them. And everyone wants to drag her to the registry office to ensure her safety and to spend her late father's money left and right." Jenna heard a note of regret in her son's words and realized that Stephen was still in her heart. A rich girl, though he tried his best to hide it. Camille, on the other hand, had fallen so in love that when she was near him, her legs were showing. The girl was not going to back down. She was determined to marry Stephen. And she would spare no expense, no effort, no time. "When do you plan to return home?" asked her tia, asked the girl's mother when she called to see how Camille was doing. "Said you were going away for a couple weeks." "Just out of interest to see our local resorts, and then we'd fly abroad as usual. And you're still gone. And you don't call. My father divorced Camille's mother while she was still alive." After many years together, the couple realized that they were very different people. The man paid his ex-wife a decent allowance. All the same, at one time she gave up her career and made a choice in favor of family and raised a daughter. He was grateful to her. And after the death of his father, the responsibilities for the maintenance of his mother took on Camille, who inherited his entire fortune by will. The daughter never refused her anything. She and her mother were always like girlfriends. Together traveled to resorts, went shopping, and shared the most intimate secrets with each other. So this time Camille couldn't help but tell her mother what had happened. "Oh, mother," sighed Camille, who realized with horror that she had indeed forgotten to tell her that she would not return as promised. "There's no way I can come right now. I'm sorry. Why don't you fly alone and I'll come back later? I'll do that. Just don't be mad at me, please." Aunt Wendy immediately suspected something was wrong. "Daughter, you remember," she said. "I can feel it. Let me tell you what you got in there. You know you can't keep anything from me." And that was the truth. Even from a distance, Wendy sensed something was wrong. "Yes," mumbled Camille. "I do have something going on here, but it's not a phone conversation. I'll tell you all about it when I get back. Deal?" "I'll fly to you today," the woman said uncompromisingly and hung up. This is all I need, Camille thought to herself, who was completely unprepared to talk to her mother. Of course, Wendy's indignation had no limit. As soon as the woman heard that her daughter had fallen in love with a local Ford bottom, she nearly lost her breath. "Could it be that you're wrong?" she asked, well aware of how windy Camille was, and not constant in her choice of life companions. "You've fallen in love so many times, and each time you thought it was forever, and you didn't need anyone but him. And then you dated for a while, and then you drifted apart. Maybe it's the same story with Stephen? Wendy just couldn't believe in her daughter that Camille could fall in love with a man with whom they were clearly from different worlds. It didn't fit the woman's mind. Naturally, she did not want this marriage, which was not surprising at all. Camille is the owner of a vast fortune, and he's a pauper? Who knows? What if he cleaned her up and left her? No, Wendy could not allow this, so in every possible way tried to convince her daughter that she did not need this young man. They went abroad as planned. She persuaded Camille that you'd meet someone much better than Twerthenot from Storan or Vladwert Anot on Prower. Aiko, Sier. Fiancé, Sdaiveri Cord Surgery Work Heaven. I'm sure of it. Daughter, why do you need him? You're getting married. You've never even mentioned it. You've been proposed to many times by various very worthy young men, but each time you've turned the down. What happened all of a sudden? What made you think this lifeguard was the right guy for you? But Camille has gotten it into her head that she loves Stephen for real, not like her former boyfriends. And if he wasn't with her, she wouldn't survive it. There was no one in the world better than Stephen for her. She was ready to do anything to marry him. At first, Stephen did not give Camille any reason to believe that her feelings were mutual. After all, he had confessed his love to Emily. They planned to get married. Stephen felt a responsibility towards this girl, but gradually their so-called friendship with Camille became more and more intimate. And Jenna's admonitions were not the least of it. The woman was clearly pressuring Stephen, going out of her way to influence the situation. Perhaps if she had not interfered, Stephen would have been able to suppress sympathy for Camille. The young man was very unwilling to betray Emily. It would be too much. He realized that if he cheated on her for real, the girl would never forgive him, but he couldn't help himself. Camille had been so actively nibbling on him that it was impossible to resist her. For months, Stephen hid their relationship, but it could not go on like this, and it was obvious to him, and to the girl herself. "I'm leaving soon," Camille said in passing. When Stephen once again visited her, Jenna supported her son and did not want a scandal. It was therefore to her advantage that the truth should be revealed as late as possible. The woman covered for her son in front of Emily and Evelyn as best she could, citing her own ill health, lying that she had sent her son here and there. When Emily dropped by without a call or invitation, she would ask where Stephen was. But it couldn't go on indefinitely. Camille wanted certainty. That was why she had gathered about his imminent departure. In fact, the girl had as much time in reserve as she wished, and there was no need for an urgent return from the Cathules. But she wanted to get specifics from Stephen, whether he would go with her and they would marry, or whether he would stay here with his provincial love. And Emily, a young man who, through his own fault, was caught between two fires. I couldn't make up my mind. Think about it, Camille insisted. I won't ask twice. Besides, you know how difficult my relationship with my mother has been lately. She's totally against you and me going out. She won't even hear about getting married. And since my dad died, my mom's the only person I'm close to. I did this for you, to confront her directly. If I didn't love you so much, it would be unthinkable. Stephen was sick of this double life himself. He was tired of lying Emily, and the fact that he was deceiving himself too did not give the young man joy. It was not only money that attracted him to Camille, and to be more precise, it was not money at all. When Stephen pulled her out of the water, he did not yet know that the girl was fabulously rich. But already at that moment, he realized that Camille is very sympathetic to him. It was as if she was from another world, not like Theo I. And it wasn't that she was a rich girl from the capital. It was something else. Barely a grasp that only a man truly in love, which Stephen was, could understand. He only realized it when Camille announced that she was leaving soon. Stephen suddenly realized that he might never see her again, to lose her forever at these thoughts. His heart clenched painfully in his chest. Oh, it was unbearable for the young man to think that Camille might disappear from his life once and for all. After saying goodbye to her, he went home to announce his decision to his mother. Jenna knew where her son had gone, so she waited impatiently for him to once again bring up the subject that she was extremely concerned about. Every time Stephen returned from Camille's, the mother would start her usual rant about their relationship and future. Over the long period of time, the young man had already learned the song by heart. It was so familiar to him that he knew exactly what his mother would say to him. He barely had time to sit down at the dinner table for a cup of tea and some refreshment. And this time he heard the same thing from Jenna. The same questions about when he would finally make up his mind and choose between Camille and Emily. And that it had to be in Camille's favor. After all, this is his chance for a completely different life, which Stephen chose completely by chance. And there might not be another one. Stephen had heard all this many times before. Jenna hadn't thought of anything new, and Stephen could not wait to inform his mother of his decision and to close the matter once and for all. "Jesus, son!" the woman exclaimed after listening to Stephen. "Well, it's come to pass at last. Are you getting married? And when the wedding? Will it be here or in the capital?" "Oh, I'm so happy for you, Stephen. You have no idea. Here's to marrying Camille and living life to the fullest. You deserve it, believe me." Once Stephen had made up his mind, he was much relieved. But he couldn't find the right words to explain it all to Emily. He couldn't find the right words. Jenna advised her son to leave silently without explaining with the girl. "Why do you want to do that?" she asked. "Why all this scandals and clarification of relations?" "You decided to leave with Camille. So go away. And then I'll explain everything to Evelyn myself." But the young man couldn't do that. His conscience wouldn't allow it. He agreed to meet with his former lover on neutral territory, so that not her, not his mother, could not interfere in their conversation. Emily did not expect such a blow. Of course, the girl's heart was occasionally scratched from time to time. She suspected that Stephen was not telling her something, but Emily had never imagined it would go this far. "You go to her because she's rich." "Yes," she asked through tears when Stephen stammered and told her about his relationship with Camille. "I felt it for a reason. Oh, for a reason. I knew right then and there that you were attracted to her. Of course, with the money, she's also beautiful. What are you going to do with me? With an ugly, beggarly girl?" "Don't say that, please," Stephen exclaimed. "You're a very pretty girl, and I'm fine with you. But understand me too. I have fallen in love with her, and I have loved her sincerely." It's a completely different feeling from the one I had for you. It's like nothing else." "Tell me, what did you miss?" Emily asked. "But what? What's wrong with me? Why did you take to the first skirt you saw so easily and ruin our relationship?" Stephen didn't know what to say to that. Just at a certain point, he realized that he treated Emily as a friend. A good, very close friend. She was an integral part of his life, and would forever be. They grew up together, had their first experience of love together. There is so much that binds them together, and always will. But it's not love. It's something else entirely. And Stephen couldn't lie anymore. The young man was corrupted by what was happening in his life. He loves one thing, hides his feelings from another. And every day, this whole situation only spiraled more, a little more, and it will finally come to a dead end. It would be impossible to find a way out. It was important for him to cut this knot, to break this vicious circle in which both he and Emily found themselves. And no matter how painful it was, he did it. Now the young man could leave with peace of mind with Camille and prepare for the wedding. When she heard what had happened between Emily and Stephen, Evelyn was furious. "How could he do that to you?" She was outraged. Jenna's good too. It turns out she's been lying to me all along, looking me in the eye. But it wasn't yesterday that her precious son got together with that rich girl from the capital. It's not like they've been dating for months, if they're getting married. Well, she's a good friend, and I'll make it work. Emily begged her aunt not to make a scandal. She was in enough pain as it was, and if she started to grind and grind it all, there would be no life at all. "Aunt, I beg you very much," Emily begged. "Don't touch Stephen or Jenna. Let it all remain on their consciences, and let them live with it. I want to forget all this as soon as possible. He betrayed me, and I don't want to see or hear from him again. I don't want to know anything about him either." Evelyn felt insanely sorry for her niece, but she couldn't not talk to Jenna. They'd been friends for so many years, and the woman had treated her and Emily so meanly. And they trusted her. But Jenna wouldn't even listen to Evelyn. "If you're here to lecture me and my son, you'd better leave," she said from the doorstep. "I'm not going to be lectured by you." "Emily, your young one will find 100 suitors. Girls are always in demand. Boys, on the other hand, have a much harder time of it. If my Stephen could find someone who has no money problems, it would be some old 50-year-old purse. I don't want that for my son. That girl God sent him. Let them get married, and my boy will live a normal life. He'll never have that opportunity again. So it's not for you or your Emily to judge him for taking this chance he's been given. Anyone else would have done the same thing." After these words, Evelyn realized that they had nothing more to talk about. The woman was shocked at what kind of snake had been nestled around his neck for years. She had no idea how selfish and greedy Jenna was. Evelyn had never noticed anything like that about her before. But as it turned out, the woman was just very good at hiding her inner self. And now that she had such a good excuse, it had come right out. She returned home in a foul mood. Emily guessed without her mother's explanations how their conversation with Jenna had ended, so she didn't even ask her aunt about what had happened between them. The girl did not want her aunt to go to her to find out about their relationship, but Evelyn did her own thing. And as it turned out, so it turned out, Jenna, on the other hand, was truly outraged that her friend had dared to try to read her morals at all. When her son came home, she told him all about it, but he didn't share his mother's opinion. "Huh? What did you want?" he asked in surprise. "That she would still be friends with you and race you. Emily is like a daughter to her. She raised her from the time she was in diapers. And I betrayed her. Let's just call things what they are. What I did was the ultimate betrayal." And Evelyn's reaction is entirely predictable. Jenna wanted her son to leave as soon as possible. The woman was only in a hurry. His Camille, who was over the moon with happiness when Stephen still decided to propose to her, also did not want to linger in a foreign city. All the girl's thoughts were occupied with wedding troubles. She was already sitting in catalogs, selecting favorite outfits. Wendy watched everything that was happening with bewilderment, but did not dare to say anything about her daughter. The woman has long since realized that it is useless, and hoped only that Camille will cool down and come to her senses. But the girl was not going to give up her happiness, and even though her mother was still strongly opposed to her marriage to Stephen, and insisted that Camille cancel the wedding. But not for this. "Your father has wanted you to spend your whole life and capital on the maintenance of some scoundrel," the woman lamented. "I'm sure he would have been as opposed to your marriage as I am. He must be rolling over in his coffin." "Mama, stop it!" Camille's pulling her back. "Wendy!" Every time she started up her usual rant again and started saying mean things about Stephen. "I love this man, and I want to commit to him. I have the right to do so. I can't help it if I've never been attracted to anyone of my so-called equal status. I'd love an equal, marry an equal, and that's it. That's the end of it." Stephen marveled at the beauty of the big city. Even in his sweetest dreams, he could not imagine that he would ever live here. Upon arrival, Camille was busy not only with the wedding preparations, but also with the selection of a separate apartment for her and Stephen. The girl realized that they would not live under the same roof with her mother. Wendy had long lived separately from her daughter. Immediately after the divorce, the woman moved into the apartment that her husband bought for her. Her father's house was too big for the two of them. After Daddy died, It stood idle. Camille couldn't afford to sell it. After all, she'd spent most of her life in it. But she didn't want to live there alone, and her apartment was too bachelor for a family. It was all new to Stephen. It was the first time he had ever met people who could so easily spend money on whatever they wanted. Camille didn't count them at all. As soon as the courtiers chose a suitable place to live, the girl easily closed the deal and paid for the purchase in cash. The young man could not imagine that such a thing was possible in real life. He had only seen something like this in movies. People from his past environment save up for a single small dwelling throughout their lives, and even get into huge loans. All of their dreams are reduced to the banal worldly things. Their own, albeit tiny, roof over their heads, small savings for a rainy day, availability of food in the refrigerator, to keep their children fed and clothed. Only when Stephen found himself in this completely different world, he realized how small and trivial the life of poor people. He had never thought about it before, and in general he thought that he and his mother did not live so badly. Now he realized the poverty he had come out of. All his past life suddenly seemed to him so boring, so uninteresting that he did not understand how he could not notice it for so many years and not dream of something really substantial. Camille had opened up a whole other world to him, and he didn't regret leaving. Jenna was right. What would have been waiting for him with Emily? A boring, gray day?
Working 9 to 6, counting every penny he spent. Living side by side with his parents under the same roof. Or a roof of your own bought solely because of the miraculous opportunity to get into a 20-year bondage. With a life like that,
love would be gone very quickly. Quarrels would begin. Squabbles. Family squabbles. Finding out who spent or overspent how much for a month. Why nothing put aside. And when would they finally start saving for their old age? All these thoughts make Stephen cringe. We never shared with him how hard it was for her to scrape out every penny to provide her son with everything he needed. Fortunately, Stephen's children have a very different fate in store for them. And he's finally starting to live a decent life himself. The wedding went splendidly. Neither Jenna nor Stephen had ever been to such a celebration in their lives. Everything was so beautiful, luxurious, and expensive that mother and son were literally breathtaking. One suit, which Camille had ordered especially for her beloved groom, cost more than Jenna earned in 6 months. How happy she was that her son had made the right choice. It was impossible to describe in words. And Emily? Stephen did not even remember. The young man was looking forward to a magical wedding trip, to which they were about to fly with Camille. And the girl herself was trying to keep thoughts of Stephen out of her mind. He had betrayed her, and she had to cut him out of her life once and for all, to find the strength to survive everything that had happened. But it wasn't that simple. After the news that fell on Emily like snow on her head, the girl realized that the young man will never leave her life, now that they were connected once and for all, and not by some invisible thread that exists solely in her imagination, but by the very real consequences of their relationship. Emily hadn't expected things to turn out this way. When she first felt a strong dizziness and malaise, the girl did not even think that she was pregnant. Go to the doctor at last, insisted her aunt, who was very much concerned about the condition of her niece. It's not the first time you fainted. We need to find out what's wrong. Could it be something serious? Yes. Evelyn, why are you so worried? Waved away Emily, who had absolutely no desire to waste time sitting in lines at the clinic. It's hot outside. Overheated. The pressure jumped. That's what crashed. It's nothing. It happens to anyone. But the aunt still insisted that Emily go to the doctor. If you don't go yourself, I'll take you by the hand, Evelyn threatened. What the hell is this? You're acting like a little girl, for God's sake. Such an onslaught was impossible to resist. In the end, Emily decided to go to this clinic just to make sure everything was all right, and to reassure her aunt. But it just can't be. mumbled Emily when the doctor informed her that she was expecting a baby. The girl was simply shocked, but her surprise caused the doctor only sincere bewilderment. "You are, by God, like a little girl," said the doctor thoughtfully. "Didn't know it made babies. They were just born yesterday?" Emily, this kind of boorish treatment was not to her liking. She was very offended that the doctor reacted so negligently to her feelings. But the girl did not become rude in response. Thanking the doctor, politely saying goodbye, she left the hospital and headed in the direction of home. "But how did you go to the clinic?" asked Evelyn. It was fine. Seeing that her niece wasn't wearing her face, the woman immediately realized that something was wrong. She had never seen Emily so depressed in her life. Evelyn immediately pounced on her with questions, and the girl decided not to hesitate. She would find out anyway. How could she hide something like that? She'd better tell her that she was having a baby with that bastard Stephen. Yes, Evelyn muttered something too, who was as much taken aback by the news as her niece. What would happen now? What to do? Nothing. Wiping away the tears that continued to hail from her eyes, Emily exclaimed, "I will not give birth to this child. Why should I? To spend my life as you hot on 2 jobs, for the sake of feeding him? While Stephen is out there having fun with his rich little leggy. And I don't need to be reminded of him like that. I'm still young, I've got my whole life ahead of me, and I can arrange it as I see fit. And this baby is just a nuisance to me. That's why I got rid of it. I've made up my mind. What are you talking about?" Evelyn was indignant, not expecting her niece to say such things.
She had always regarded Emily fearfully, quietly. And hear this sort of thing. Of course, the woman was very reluctant to have Emily terminate the pregnancy. Who knows how it would turn out later? What if something went wrong? And then her niece could never be a mother again. That's a real tragedy for a woman. Evelyn was sure that in the future, Emily's mental wounds would heal, and she would meet another worthy man whom she would love and want them to have children. No, the woman could not allow Emily to make such a serious mistake, which could become fatal and put a cross on all her future life.
She had to talk Emily out of this desperate move at all costs. "Emily, listen to me, please," said Evelyn, trying to find the right words to explain to her niece that her future baby and her relationship with Stephen must not be conflated in her mind.
You must not, under any circumstances, take your attitude towards that scumbag out on the baby. The baby is innocent and deserves to be born. Just trust me and do as I ask. If you don't want to raise him, I will. I won't abandon him, and I'll help you any way I can. Just don't make a mistake. I'm begging you. You'll regret it later, and you'll never get it back.
Oh my God. Evelyn, what are you talking about? Emily exclaimed indignantly.
You brought me up and worked like a dam to feed me, to make me drunk, to clothe me. And you want to put another ballast on your neck? I dare remind you that you're not as young as you were when Mom died, and you took me into your care. What do you want to condemn yourself to? To work for the rest of your life? Evelyn did not share her niece's thoughts. The woman was so sure that resentment spoke in youth. She wanted to hope that the girl that the girl would come to her senses and keep the child. After all, the doctor had convinced her that it was very dangerous to terminate the pregnancy. Emily was torn apart by contradictions. On the one hand, she did not want to give birth to this baby because she was convinced that it would ruin her and her aunt's life. A child is not a toy. It needs to be fed, brought up, and she's still so young, and she has a good job. No, there's no money either. You put her around the neck of her aunt, who brought her up as her own daughter, who didn't leave her in trouble. That's not the kind of collar a girl wants. But on the other hand, if she really will never be able to have children again, and then she meets the one she will love and wants to become a mother, what then? Emily didn't know what to do. She was under pressure from both the doctors and her aunt. And it was literally tearing her apart. There wasn't much time left. The girl realized that she had to make a decision. Wandering her through the park, she was so immersed in her heavy thoughts that she did not hear an elderly gypsy woman calling her. Fiancé. Postoika, said the woman and beckoned with her finger. Emily, come closer to you. Don't be afraid. I won't take much of your time. That's all I need. With annoyance, Emily thought to herself, who had been afraid of gypsies since childhood, reminded of those times when they filled the whole local market, and not letting you step a step, ran after passers-by in droves, siphoning off money and jewelry. Evelyn, too, had always tried to avoid them. The woman was convinced that nothing good could be expected from them, but always strictly instructed Emily to run away from them. But if still catches up with them and yank them politely. Do not dare to be rude. If they curse you, you won't feel bad. Then you'll be floundering in the swamp all your life. They're not good people, and they have a bad eye, so it's better not to quarrel with them. At that moment, the girl remembered her aunt's words, and that's the only reason why she didn't dare to send the old gypsy woman away. Unfortunately, Emily had no valuables or money with her. She just went out for a walk. So the girl hoped that when the gypsy realized that she had nothing to take from her, she would leave her alone with her predictions. But the gypsy girl did not want money and jewelry. She really wanted to tell her something very important, and she saw it all as if she saw it with her own eyes. And there was not an ounce of falsehood in her words. You sit down, she said, as Emily approached the bench near which the mysterious, strange woman stood. As they say, there's no truth in feet. And listen to me. Emily, as if mesmerized, lowered herself onto the bench. The woman sat down next to her, and taking the girl by the hand, continued. I see that the child you carry under your heart, you want to throw away. You want to throw away. So I tell you what, if you do it, you will never be able to atone for your sin. And you can't forgive yourself for it either. Day and night, in your dreams, you'll see your unborn baby. You want to kill him, because you just do not know and cannot even imagine what is ahead of you. Did your rival take your lover away from you? Took him right out from under your nose. And it's a deep wound that's been weighing on your mind. But in time, believe me, it will heal. There won't even be a trace of it left. You'll find your love, but she'll destroy hers. That's her destiny. Your rival won't be happy with him. He won't be happy with anyone. The evil fate has already launched its clouds over them, and then very soon the hour of reckoning will come for the fact that he gave up his destiny for the sake of profit. He doesn't love her. He just talked himself into it, convinced himself that he did. But in reality, softness is too much your lover. You need a completely different person, firm, with a strong will, reliable, responsible. And you'll meet him again, but knowing only one thing, you won't be happy if you have a baby. There won't be a son that breathes under your heart. He won't be with you anyway. But for his sake, my dear, you must have a baby. He's very necessary, not you. For your rival, it'll be the meaning of life, and you give it to her. When she's on her knees begging you in despair? You'll remember my words when it happens. And now, goodbye. I have to go. Emily looked away for a second, and when she turned back to the gypsy woman to ask why she should believe her, the woman was no longer there. It was as if she had fallen through the earth. The girl even thought she had dreamed the whole thing. But when Emily saw a colored handkerchief on the bench, she realized that no, it was not a hallucination. A few seconds ago, the woman was still there, and then it was as if she had vanished. With difficulty, she rose to her feet. The girl wandered home, but walked. That was enough for today. On the way, she pondered whether or not she should tell Evelyn what had happened, and decided she wouldn't. Emily really didn't want to upset Evelyn. She knew what it was like to be a gypsy, and she realized that if she told her, Evelyn would not be able to sleep well at night. She was sure she would forget about this ridiculous encounter the very next day, but she was wrong. The gypsy woman's words did not come out of Emily's head. The girl tried to understand what she meant when she spoke about the child. How could he be the meaning of life for Camille? What kind of nonsense is this? The girl asked herself and found no answer. But no matter how she felt about the gypsies, the prediction stuck in her heart. Suddenly, Emily decided to save the life of her baby. A few days after meeting with the mysterious strangers, the girl dreamed of a little boy. She held him in her arms, from which he suddenly jumped and, waving Emily's hand, disappeared in a white haze. The girl did not understand what the dream meant. After all, if she decided to keep the baby alive, he should not leave this world. When Emily woke up, she thought for a long time and tried to find an answer to explain the essence of the dream to herself. But she couldn't do it. However, this was not the only mystery she had to solve. It took quite a long time to get the answers to Emily's questions. She just had to wait. Life took its course, and gradually, everything was falling into place. Everything has its time, and one should not try to run ahead of the locomotive. Most of all, Emily was afraid of explanations with Jenna, the maid, which obviously would not have been avoided if the woman had not left town. Evelyn fears Nace did not share, and once speculated about how Stephen's mother would react to the news about her grandson. She only grinned. Never mind, she reassured Emily. She'll see the belly sooner or later anyway, but there's no telling who could have knocked you up. Not all her son is a heroic lover. Auntie, we're kidding someone. Smirking sadly, Emily? You and she know perfectly well that I have never had and could never have had any other man but Stephen. Maybe you cheated on him too? Evelyn grinned with a squint. There he is, walking around. You've been keeping up with him too. That's the belly that brought the house. And your beau ran away. Look for him. Or he didn't run away, but lives somewhere abroad. And he sends you money from the other side. Did you find a millionaire too? Why not? You should joke about everything, sighed Emily, who was ready even to persuade her mother to move to another city. If only Jenna and Stephen would never find out about the baby. But fortunately, to go to such extreme measures did not have to. Not even a month after her son's wedding, Jenna packed a suitcase and went to Stephen. She couldn't live a day without her precious little boy. She rented out her house to some married couple. Why should it sit idle? No, think about it. Evelyn was outraged when she found out her former best friend was leaving. She didn't even stop by to say goodbye or give her a heads up. But if not as a friend, then at least as a neighbor. But no, so why should she say goodbye to us? Emily grinned so sadly. They do not want to apologize to us anymore. We are not their boss. Aunt Tanya asked to join them, and they didn't refuse. She'll keep order there instead of the servants. Why not? Emily, how can you say that? Evelyn snapped at her niece. No, of course I understand that you're angry. I'm angry too, but not that angry. I am angry. The girl was surprised. Really? No, you think I'm angry. I hate Stephen, huh? What about his mom? Honestly, I don't have anything to do with her. Although if you put it that way, she's the one who raised Stephen. They always had these ideas of a rich, luxurious life lurking in their heads. And as soon as a good opportunity came up, they immediately grabbed it with a dead grip and realized what they can is. Sorpororfor, Kiapai, Emer, Harris Sistiprates. Horse tot fribra. Incorriver, Ishure Bivewar, Yer. Can you be mad at them for that? They did what they thought was right. Except I don't have to speak kindly of them anymore. And I don't have to treat them well either. So no one is asking you to do that, said the aunt, who sincerely did not understand why Emily had suddenly become so ingrained. Evelyn tried to do her best to calm her niece down. Emily was not to be nervous. She didn't feel well, which was not surprising. If you think about Stephen and get angry all the time, nothing good will come of it. The months dragged on like years. Emily didn't know what to do with herself. She could not work in such a position, as she constantly felt ill and could faint at any moment. She had no love, no tenderness for the future baby. She didn't understand why she had left this back at all. Dreams of how she and Evelyn would raise him, and on what? On her aunt? On a paycheck. It was funny and sad at the same time. Emily laughed at herself. How stupid she had to be. From time to time, she thought to herself, regretting that she had succumbed to all the pressure and left the baby. The girl was shocked when at the next doctor's appointment she heard, "Congratulations, Mommy. The baby is developing normally. Everything is perfectly fine with him. Look how cute he is." The doctor was holding out the ultrasound image to Emily, and she didn't want to see this baby. Didn't want to know about it. The girl realized that as soon as he was born, her life would change once and for all. It would be possible to put a cross on her. Her best years she will spend on diapers and spashanki next to a child from a man who betrayed her. Meanwhile, he would be having fun and enjoying life. The thought made Emily shudder. Suddenly for herself, she realized that she too had become a cynic. Why on earth should she think any differently? Stephen had run off with a rich, beautiful girl, married her, and was now rolling around like a cheese in butter. And she's got to support his spinsterhood on her own. Oh no, that's not going to work. Emily, I don't understand you, sighed Evelyn, when her niece told her that it would be a good idea to collect alimony from Stephen in the long run. You didn't want him and Jenna to know about the baby. And now you want them not only to know about it, but to acknowledge it. Stubborn was supporting him. I don't understand you. I just thought it was kind of unfair, Emily said. But the job itself is fine in this town. No, you're not young anymore. And I don't think they're going to hire me with this. So what are you going to do? I'm going to sit on your back? I'm going to ruin my life like when this one turns 3 and goes to kindergarten. I'll have to take any job to feed him. Stephen will enjoy life. But why should we? Why do we have to carry everything on our backs? In fact, Emily was not only interested in money, but in the fact that the child is a great opportunity to upset Stephen's relationship. Tears, it is unlikely that this rich, spoiled everything will like that her beloved husband will be connected with his former lover throughout his life, and that his firstborn child will be born not by her. Such a thing could deal a serious blow to her self-esteem, and it was quite likely that Camille would not accept it and would separate from Stephen. But these thoughts were so silly that Emily herself realized it after a while and decided to leave everything as it was. She didn't need Stephen after what he had done. Even if the young man and split up with Camille, where is the guarantee that again will not run away for another rich visiting skirt? No, Emily didn't need a man like that. And she knew it with her mind, only with her heart. She couldn't accept the fact that she and Stephen would never be together. She hated him, but deep down she loved him and thought of him. She had never experienced such contradictory and strong feelings in her life, which in one moment turned upside down. Not so long ago, Emily was a naive, trusting girl, sure that she had a beloved man whom she would marry and be the happiest in the world. But now she was carrying a child from a scoundrel and a traitor who in an instant, without thinking at all, exchanged their feelings for money. Emily did not believe in Stephen's love for Camille. She was convinced that it was impossible to fall in love so quickly with a man whom one hardly knew, who had reached for a long ruble, and that was all. And Camille turned out to be no slouch. Emily had hoped that her mother would oppose their marriage, and Camille would have no choice but to give up. But as it turned out, Wendy's opinion was not at all important to the young rich woman. Camille was happy and could not even imagine how fleeting this happiness would be. All sorts of things happen in life. That's what happened to them, for which the girl was so punished by fate. She didn't understand. 2 months before the expected date of childbirth, Emily was put in labor. It doesn't get easier by the hour. The girl was indignant when the doctor informed her that it was necessary. I am already sitting at home and almost never go out. Why should I go to the hospital? Here you will be under the care of doctors, the doctor replied. Believe me, it will be better. Better for who? Emily thought to herself. Who couldn't wait to be free of this burden? Pregnancy was a burden to her. She didn't want this child, and no matter how much she convinced herself that she should love it, she couldn't do it. But it was too late to change anything. It was only a few weeks away from delivery, and Emily knew she had to make it. And then, in her head, suddenly arose the thought that after the baby was born, she could convince her aunt that it would be better if they left him in the hospital. Of course, at first, Evelyn would take her niece's suggestion to heart. Emily understood that, but she still hoped that common sense would prevail and the woman would accept the fact that she was unable to put the baby on her feet and that he would be a burden to them. Don't be upset, my dear, my aunt reassured my niece when she visited her in the hospital. You and I have already bought a stroller. You're not into the mood now? You'll blame your baby that you don't feel well and you have to lie here. And once it's born, you'll hold it in your arms and feed it, and you'll love it. And where did she get this ridiculous confidence that I would love him as soon as he was born? Emily thought to herself, annoyed by her aunt's words, but hesitating to admit it. After all, Evelyn was the only person close to her. And Emily realized that she would be offended to hear reproaches, insults in her address. Returning from her niece and almost approaching her house, Evelyn ran into Jenna. At first, she didn't even recognize her. The woman looked lost. Evelyn felt like she couldn't even see where she was going. When she got closer and called out to her former best friend, she didn't react and continued on until she reached her house. Wow, the woman thought to herself. She could have at least said hello. Evelyn had neither time nor inclination to ponder the ignorance of Jenna, who was now just a neighbor to her. Her mouth was full of her own worries. Emily was already in labor, about to give birth. And they didn't even have a nursery ready. As soon as she got home, Evelyn started doing chores. She wanted to have time to go shopping and buy the baby some diapers, washcloths, and all the necessary things. If Emily gave birth before the due date, they wouldn't even have anything to wear for the discharge. The woman was distracted by a sudden knock on the door. The bell had been broken a long time ago. Evelyn couldn't get around to calling a handyman to fix it, and there was no time for that, to tell the truth. So the woman did not betray, and the absence of a doorbell made absolutely no difference. Why would she need one if no one came to visit her and Emily? And before, if anyone had, it had only been Stephen and Jenna. It was her on the doorstep, just like old times. When Evelyn saw Jenna at the door, she was very much surprised to see that she had raised Nosov, and now she was here. The sheer audacity of it! After everything that had happened between their families, Evelyn couldn't feel any differently about the woman's visit. What do you want? She asked without even saying hello. No salt, no sugar. I don't know why you're here. Get out of here! I really need to talk to you, the woman said. It won't take long, but I'm asking you very much. You listen to me, please. Why should I listen to you? Surprised Evelyn, who was already boiling with anger and was about to spew the accumulated venom at the unknown guest. What are you doing here? I got tired of the capital's life and decided to return to my hometown. And the houses are occupied, no place to sleep. Or she knocked you and your demonstrative son over. Rich family. What's that got to do with me? I'm not the one who left everything. And the aging jingle of coins rushed to another town. Jenna didn't know what to say. And only after a few minutes, while they stood silently in the doorway, Evelyn noticed that the women were dressed all in black. Tears streamed down her cheeks. So do you listen, or do you propose? She asked, breaking the silence that had appeared between them. Evelyn felt no pity for Jenna Evelyn, but she couldn't chase her away either. The woman looked so pathetic, so helpless. It was obvious. Something really bad had happened. Otherwise, she wouldn't have come. Why bring up old friends who are no longer your equals?
If life is rich and prosperous, there's no need to keep the Boyers apart. They have their own lives, and the villains are on their own. What could they possibly have in common? Okay, come on in, muttered Evelyn through gritted teeth, who at that moment thought how good it was that they hadn't had time to buy baby stuff yet. She didn't need to see this, nor did she need to know that Emily was about to have a baby boy. Evelyn Jenna had come for a few days and was about to go back. At the time, she didn't yet know why the woman had come to see her and what tragic news she brought with her. As in the hustle and bustle of daily business, she hadn't noticed that the neighbor's house was empty and the tenants had moved out. Jenna could not find the right words to tell her good old friends about what she had experienced. The woman was in a state of deep shock. She had lost the most precious thing in her life, her beloved only son. And no one will never give him back to her and will never replace him. Jenna will never be able to get over such a terrible grief, no matter how many years passed. Now this deep heartache is with her forever. And the only thing left for the woman is to accept it and come to terms with it, which at that moment seemed utterly impossible to her. Evelyn couldn't believe what she was hearing. She couldn't accept that Stephen was no longer alive. Yes, he had betrayed her niece, acted like the ultimate scumbag. But death! She had never wished Stephen anything bad and could understand what Jenna was experiencing now. It's horrible, she sighed, listening to the woman. I can't think how it's possible. I told him not to ride that stupid motorcycle, the woman lamented. But she and Camille are young and fast. They can't handle anything. What was I doing on my honeymoon? When they sent pictures of them jumping from a great height on a cable into icy water, riding scooters. What? When they came back and Camille gave him the damn motorcycle? Turns out he'd always wanted one. I've been daydreaming my head off. I can't imagine how I'm going to go on living, or why I should live at all. As Evelyn tried her best to comfort the woman, she urged Jenna in every possible way to keep her thoughts away from her. The woman didn't ask about Camille, though she knew that it was not easy for her either. After all, she had taken the young man away from her niece and married him, which had caused Emily unbearable heartache. Evelyn could not forget it so easily, even though Stephen had died tragically. I know Emily is expecting a child. Jenna whispered the rally through her tears as she finished wailing. Tell me, is it Stephen's son or daughter? It's very important for me to know. Understand? It's gone. I have no one left. This baby, if it is Stephen's, is the meaning of my life. This baby is the only thing I should continue to live for. Jenna's question put Evelyn in a stupor. She didn't understand how the woman could know about the baby when she had gone to see her son and his wife. Lee had not yet had her belly visible. And now that Jenna was back, there was no way she could face Emily, since the girl was lying in the hospital, as if she had read her friend's mind. The woman immediately answered the question that had been swirling around in Evelyn's head, but she hadn't dared to ask it.
My tenants told me that your niece goes on vacation, Jenna said. We called them periodically. They told me what was going on in the house. They'd tell me about the neighbors, too. That's how I found out your Emily was having a baby. I thought she'd met her happiness, too. Tolik's not getting along very fast, and we haven't seen a man around her, so it's Stephen's baby. Even if it is, what does it matter now? Asked Evelyn, who did not want to break her niece's word. She had promised not to tell either Jenna or Stephen that Emily was expecting a child, and the woman had found out. Only it had obviously happened not yesterday or a week ago, but a long time ago. And if Stephen was alive now, it is unlikely that the caring grandmother would have remembered her grandchildren. And so, of course, when All Alone left and about old friends, and about the girl abandoned by her son at the mercy of fate can think. Why not? Evelyn caught herself thinking that she was still angry with Jenna and Stephen. The woman realized that it was very wrong, and in a way even sacrilegious. Stephen is already in the ground, and his mother is suffering in a way that will not be able to find peace for a long time. To be angry in such a situation is simply unacceptable. Perhaps if Jenna hadn't brought it up, Evelyn would not have brought up what Stephen had done. But since she had brought it up, it might be worth explaining it to her and setting the record straight. I promised Emily not to tell anyone about it, warned Evelyn, who had decided that she would not tell her niece about Stephen's death. It would make her very nervous, which in her present position was unacceptable. The woman had taken Jenna at her word that she too would keep her mouth shut. Later, when the baby was born, they would tell her everything together. But not now, so I won't be able to check on her at the hospital, the woman said. And that question surprised Evelyn, who had thought they had agreed on everything. Of course not, she answered. Later. All later. She shouldn't be nervous right now. What if she finds out what I told you about the baby and Stephen's death? I think you realize that. Even though Jenna had given Evelyn her word not to talk about the baby, she couldn't help herself. Watching the suffering of Camille, who had lost all taste for life after Stephen's death, the woman's heart was torn to pieces. When her son decided to marry Camille, she thought he made that choice solely because she was rich, and she didn't have much faith in the girl's sincere, deep feelings either. Jenna was convinced that they were just convenient for each other. A newcomer, a penniless husband, who has not a penny behind his soul, will never shake his rights and will be entirely and completely subordinate to his wife. He has nowhere to go. To give up a luxurious life and return to his darkness, cockroaches he will not want under any circumstances. And for spoiled, windy, and willful Camille, such a husband is ideal. With Stephen Tuss, everything was more than clear. He tasted a different life and sought to gain a foothold in this completely different world, which he could only access by marrying Camille. It was only after the death of her son that Jenna realized how much the girl had loved him. As soon as Camille heard that Emily was carrying a child, Stephen immediately informed her mother-in-law that she was going out on the town. You don't need to come here, Jenna said. I haven't told you everything yet. Camille didn't understand why it was a secret, and she didn't share Evelyn's point of view at all. Didn't she realize that this baby was all that was left of Stephen? She resented it. And we just have to give him a decent future. Whether Emily wants it or not, I will still take part in the upbringing of the baby, and he will live the life he deserves by birthright. I will provide for him in every way I can. It was impossible to change Camille's mind. If she had something in her head, she would do what she decided to do. Jenna knew that for sure. During the time she had lived with her daughter-in-law under the same roof, the woman had gotten to know her character well. The only thing she managed to persuade the girl on her arrival was not to visit Emily in the hospital until they had the birth. And that was only because Camille was worried about the welfare of the future baby, and Jenna had been able to press that point intelligently. Okay, Camille agreed. But I still have to talk to Evelyn. I want to give them money for a new house. I want them to buy a decent place for the baby to live. I don't want Steven's son to live in that shack. Jenna realized that all this could end in a scandal. She had promised not to tell anyone. And it turned out that Camille, who had made a big fuss about everything. Of course, Evelyn was shocked when she saw Steven's wife on the doorstep. But indignant and make a scene did not become. The woman was too tired of everything that was happening in her and Emily's life. She didn't need another pointless scandal. "What do you want?" she asked, not even inviting the intruder into the house. "I think you yourself realize your visit is inappropriate. Get out of here. Wait." And Camille pulled her. "Come on. Neither you nor I are going to take this lightly. I really need to talk to you. Hear me out, please." Evelyn had absolutely no desire to listen to Camille. That girl had ruined her niece's life. It was possible that things would have turned out very differently for Emily if Camille hadn't gotten in her way. But that's just one way of looking at it. On the other hand, this girl too deserved sympathy. It was evident to Camille that she was not wearing mourning for the sake of pathos. The girl had large bruises under her eyes, which clearly indicated that she had very little sleep. And so it was, in fact. After Steven's death, sleepless nights had become a regular occurrence for Camille. As soon as she closed her eyes, her beloved husband would come to her at once. Camille cried and begged him to come back, asked why he had left so early and so quickly. But she received no answer. It seemed that there would be no end to the girl's suffering. She loved him so much that she could not imagine her life without him. But Steven would never come back, and Camille sincerely wanted to do something for his son. Unfortunately, God had not given her a child with the man she loved, and she would never be able to be the mother of the baby she and Steven had in common. "All right, come in," Evelyn said. "I'm ready to hear you out without further ado." Camille put the suitcase on the table. Evelyn looked at her with astonished eyes and did not understand what was happening. "What the hell is this?" she asked. "Is that money?" Camille replied. "I looked up how much houses cost in your town. I asked my realtor to research prices and see what's available. There's $5 million for a nice place. I think that should be enough. My realtor will be in town in a few days, but unfortunately, I will have to leave already. Things can't wait, and there's been a lot piling up lately. I know that Emily is expecting Steven's baby. I would very much like her and the baby to live in decent conditions. If this money is not enough, or if you choose something more expensive, then of course I will add to it. Just please do not refuse and do not take my action in the face. I really want to help." Don't misunderstand me. A while ago, Evelyn would have sent the hell away from this insolent, rich netizen who shakes her finances left and right and thinks that any issue can be solved with money. But at that moment, she couldn't do it. It seemed to the woman that Camille was speaking so sincerely that she simply did not have the tongue to insult her. "So will you take the money?" asked the girl after a few minutes.
Evelyn was thinking so hard that she didn't even notice that I hadn't said a word to Camille. "I'm sorry," she mumbled confusedly. "I was just thinking." "I can see that," Camille smiled. "But so I also wanted to tell you that I'll help you with the baby's upbringing. You realize that I have very great opportunities. I loved Steven, and I would like his son to live in decent conditions. You will let me help you, won't you?" That's not really what Camille wanted. No, of course not. She would not in any case have left Emily the baby and would have ensured them a decent existence. But in her heart, she wanted very much to bring up her son Steven herself. She was sure that such love as she had for him would only happen once in a lifetime. And she could never love anyone so much again.
and she had nothing left of Stephen but memories. But if she had a son, that's a different matter.
Camille doesn't on her to Camille would give him not only all her money, but her love, warmth, tenderness. She is sure that she could be a good mother for the boy, but the girl could talk about it only with Emily and only after the birth, before which there was still a decent amount of time. After the meeting with Evelyn, Camille, as she had planned, left for the capital to settle some business. She asked Jenna to let her know the approximate date of the birth so that she could come. I have to talk to her, Camille said firmly when her mother-in-law tried to dissuade her from seeing Emily. Otherwise, I won't be me, especially since you told me yourself that Emily didn't want this baby. She was even thinking about getting rid of it. Or did you lie to me? And Evelyn didn't tell you any of this. Of course Jenna didn't lie. Evelyn had taken it upon herself to share with her friend what she'd kept to herself for so long. She needed someone to talk to about it. And Jenna was the only person to whom the woman could tell everything to the letter. For a moment, it even seemed to her that they had gone back in time. And, as in the good old days, sitting in the small kitchen with a cup of tea, they had a heart-to-heart talk. The woman was not even angry at Jenna for blabbing about everything to Camille. After all, Emily had money. It wouldn't hurt to buy a new house, and it would be nice to renovate the old one. They were going to build a nursery. And the house hasn't been renovated in years. The last time it was done was when Emily was a little girl. It's time to get on with it. Especially since the baby would soon be born. And for that, they needed to move somewhere. And Camille's gift of money came in handy. But how to say? Emily thought about it, and she thought to herself, how to explain to her, where suddenly I got the money for a new house and repairs? The woman decided to lie that the money appeared in her hands quite by accident. Someone threw them in a stroller, which she left near the house, because that day she had a lot of purchases, and some of them could not carry, put in the stroller bought for the future baby, and when she came to the house, began to gradually unload the purchases. At first, she brought some of them in, and when she came back, the money was allegedly already in the stroller. But who put it there, the woman did not see. It was a silly story, but Evelyn couldn't think of anything else. She couldn't tell the truth. It was only a short time before the birth, and the woman would never forgive herself if anything happened to her niece or her baby. After listening to her aunt, Emily laughed. Evelyn's story seemed so ridiculous that she couldn't hold back her emotions. Do you believe it yourself? She asked. Do you think I'm lying to you? The woman was indignant. It's the truth. I told you everything as it happened, and you don't believe me? You insult me, Emily. You insult me. But I can see in your eyes that you're hiding something from me, Emily said. But that's okay. I'll find out sooner or later. As soon as I get out of here, I'll find out where you got the money from. Wait, I won't be here much longer. On the day of discharge from the hospital, Camille made a real holiday for Emily. The girl left for the city as soon as Jenna informed her that the labor had begun. Evelyn was looking forward to this moment, and as soon as she received a call from the hospital, the woman immediately shared the happy news with her friend. On the day when Emily and her newborn son were to return home, a whole column of expensive jeeps stood near the maternity hospital, each of which had stickers with newborn babies, blue ribbons, and congratulatory inscriptions. Seeing all this, Emily was confused. Look, she shoved her aunt, who had come to greet her with flowers. It's no other way than someone gave birth to a millionaire's son today. A whole delegation came. Emily, it's all for you, Evelyn said, confused. I had to tell you something. I didn't know how. In general, the woman herself did not expect that Camille would organize such a meeting with Emily from the maternity hospital. For her, the whole thing was a complete surprise. Oh, but Evelyn knew right away that it was her. Who else would it be? In the local maternity hospital, there are no such rich women in labor whose husbands can afford such a luxury. And Utah, one of the cars, the very first into the row, belonged to Camille. Evelyn recognized it immediately. "What is she doing here?" Emily whispered when she saw a girl with a bouquet of flowers coming toward them. "Auntie, I don't know what's going on. What kind of circus is this? What was she even doing here?" Emily was furious. She was even ready to make a scandal, but she found the strength to pull herself together. "Okay," she muttered to herself when Camille came up and said that they needed to talk in private. "Come on, let's go talk." Emily didn't realize what was going on. It was only when she and Camille had gone to the nearest park and she had told her about Stephen's death that everything came to a head. "It just can't be," she whispered, wiping away the tears in her eyes. But how could it be? He was so young, so handsome. He would have lived and lived. I don't understand how this could have happened, and why to his? "I'm really sorry. I'm so sorry for your loss." Emily felt a pinching sensation in her chest, as if something was choking her. It was the hardest thing she had ever felt. The moment Camille had informed her of Stephen's death. Emily felt as if she had lost something very important, that part of her life with which so many pleasant and warm memories were connected. She had loved him very much, and now she was convinced that Camille was also sincere in her feelings. If Stephen had not been so dear to her, would she have come here to offer her help? Camille's request seemed strange to Emily, but she did not consider it impertinent. The girl felt for her and her grief. Emily saw that Camille's concern was very sincere. Stephen's death was a real blow to her, from which she could hardly ever recover. The girl took time to think it over. So out of the blue to make such a decision, she could not after all. It is her son. And, as it turned out, the only thing Stephen had left. Of course, she would allow Camille to take part in the boy's upbringing and accept from her the help the girl offered, but in a way that would give the baby to her to raise. That was something to think about. And how could she give it to her now? The baby had just been born. It needed its mother's milk. The birth mother should be there, at least for the first year of life. Emily felt she was ready for a fresh start. 6 months later, she didn't consider little Stephen a burden, but she wasn't ready to raise him either, even with the money Camille had generously given her. Emily did not feel free. She did not want to sit on the neck of the widow of her former lover for the rest of her life. The girl really wanted to realize and achieve something herself, and the child was a hindrance in this. Camille was happy when Emily informed her that if they were ready to give Stephen to her for upbringing, they didn't have to formalize anything. It was completely unnecessary. By then, Camille had taken over some of the work. Wendy, who had always dreamed of taking part in the family business, but her husband never saw her as a full partner. For many years of their life together, the man saw Wendy only as his wife. Now she was finally able to realize what she was very happy about. Camille had the opportunity to devote all her time to the baby. She did only those things that did not require her to spend a lot of time. Little Stephen became the meaning of life for her. Had it not been for him, there is no telling how she would have coped with the unbearable heartache that tore her apart after Stephen's death. And when her son came along, everything in Camille's life changed. She was happy to get up in the morning again, and she was happy to plunge into her daily routine. Now she had something to live for, and for that, Camille was insanely grateful to Emily. She had not expected her to be so compassionate and supportive. After everything that had happened between them, it was especially valuable. In time, everything fell into place, and every single one of the gypsy's prophetic words came true. Emily found her place in life and met the man she loved. By that time, her son was long gone. She regularly visited both Stephen and Camille, who by then had become so attached to each other that they were inseparable, and the women could sit in the kitchen for hours, drinking tea and talking. Stephen's death brought Camille and Emily very close together. With him gone, they had nothing more to share. But there was